We're going to focus today on communication. We're going to take a look at the healthy relationship continuum, and we're going to look at the resources available to us as we navigate through all of our relationships, our partner, our family members, our coworkers, and our friends. So where you place your focus in a relationship is really important. And so today, when we take a look at all of those relationships, we're going to work on the development of our communication skills, trust, and that strengthening of a mutual respect for one another. The agenda, today we're going to take a look at communication. We're going to go over some definitions, some variables, disruptors, and how to improve our communication skills. We're going to take a look at listening. We're going to take a look at the healthy relationship continuum, and we're going to review the resources available to us. So this slide asks the question, which is the hardest for you to say of the following statements? I was wrong, I'm sorry. I need help. Worcestershire sauce. I appreciate you. I love you. Or you're awesome. Now, a bit of a joke in there with the third one down, because it is a hard statement to say, but for some people, so are a few of the other statements listed on the slide. So today we're going to take a look at that and our communication, our skill, and our comfort in expressing ourselves in a meaningful way in an effort to enhance or improve or maintain the relationships in our lives. So what is communication? This slide reminds us that it's an exchange of information. It's an opportunity to express a message in a way that someone else will hear and understand. And also, when we look at what is communication, it's listening and attempting to understand the message from the other person's perspective. So important to note that effective communication is what we're striving to achieve. That interchange that brings about a mutual understanding, and it will ensure that our communication is clear, concise, correct, and in a complete manner. Not something we should take for granted. So there are many variables that could impact our communication. So for example, the sender variables, the skills, attitudes, our knowledge, our background, prejudices, the environment, self-image, personal predisposition. Other impacting variables include the medium in which you're communicating. So we've often heard of how difficult it is to have a meaningful conversation through email or text. It's important to recognize the receiver's variables, and then certainly the feedback you receive when you're trying to communicate. So the person on the receiving end and their response. So how do we communicate? This next slide takes a look at the channels of communication. And we're going to analyze not only impact, but the control we have when we communicate through three different elements: our words, our paralanguage, and our body language. So the words that we use while we communicate, you'll see have a very high control when we look at the communication impact. However, they only account for 7% of the impact. Paralanguage, so perhaps the tone or inflection that we apply when we're speaking, that has an average amount of control, but 38% impact. And what's really important here is our body language. Weak control, but in fact makes up for 55% of the impact. We also should take a look at the disruptions in communication. So some of those as listed are what I think, what I mean, what I think I'm saying, what I say, and then in turn, what you want to hear, what you think you might be hearing, what you are hearing, what you think you understand, what you want to understand, what you actually understand. All of these things can actually interfere and disrupt the effectiveness of the communication. This slide reminds us of a really important quote brought to us by renowned author Stephen Covey. The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has actually taken place. So really important to recognize that problem as another barrier for effective communication. We often think that effective communication has occurred, but that in fact is a bit of a barrier to the success of making sure you've transferred knowledge effectively. So we're going to talk about what is listening. The topic of active listening is something that we are going to speak quite a bit about today. A really important element to the effective communication piece and how that could impact a healthy relationship. Making sure that we're listening with intention, and in the coming slides, we're going to speak to this more in depth. This slide has many different images about listening, and I want to draw your attention to the walkie-talkies in the middle. So there are lots of different ways that we, in fact, engage in this communication, whether that's text or writing, email, or maybe face-to-face. The walkie-talkie concept, though, reminds us that when two people are communicating with walkie-talkies, you actually have to wait for the one person to stop speaking before you can respond. Otherwise, the communication is impaired. So what a great reminder that listening is extremely important, but much like when two people are using walkie-talkies, we really have to wait for the sender, the communicator, the speaker to stop what they want to say before we start what we have to say. So an opportunity now to reflect on your own listening skills. How good are they? Would you rate yourself as a good listener? Is this an area that you might need to give some attention to? So in the coming slides, we're going to take a look at our listening skills. Another quote by Stephen Covey: most people do not listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. So as promised, an opportunity to take a look at our own listening skills. When you are replying while you're having a conversation with someone, have you taken into account with what has been said just prior to your reply? Really important that you want to understand the message first before you reply to the message. So now we're going to take a look at the definition of dialogue. Really important as we're trying to understand the most effective communication for our interpersonal relationships, that we take a look at all of those definitions associated with the elements of effective communication. So dialogue, as the slide suggests, is a noun and means the free flow of meaning between two or more people. So just food for thought. And now we're going to take a look at the levels of listening. So you probably can think of examples of times when you've been in a conversation or you've been trying to argue, dispute, or state your intentions with something, and you're in a conversation with somebody else who in fact might be at the level 1. They are absolutely ignoring you and they are not really listening. We're not trying to achieve a level of listening in the lower of these levels for obvious reasons. They will impair the effectiveness or the success of the communication piece. Level 2, we pretend we're listening by artificially making noises like yeah, really, but not something that is going to be productive in this concept of effective communication. A level 3 listener, selectively listening, hearing only certain parts of the conversation. This person might be distracted and they're only giving you a portion of their attention. Level 4, starting to see some improvements. We have attentive listening, paying attention, and focusing the energy on the words being said. And of course, what we're trying to achieve here is a level 5 level of listening. Empathetic listening, the highest form of listening with the intention to understand. We're now going to take a look at the difference between sympathy and empathy and how that relates to your listening skills. Sympathetic listening, the focus is on the listener and their experience, whereas empathic listening, also interchanged with the word empathetic listening, is the focus is now on the person in conflict and their needs. So really important to note the difference and how it could impact the exchange or interchange of information. So empathetic or empathic listening, we make a sincere attempt to show interest and sensitivity. You're showing that you recognize the situation's importance and that you really do want to understand what it means to them. We're now going to take a look at the active listening skills. So as previously mentioned, in effective communication, this element is extremely important. And we're going to take a look at 4 of those things that we want to achieve when we are working hard on our active listening skills. So paraphrasing, reflecting, summarizing, and questioning. The following slides are going to do a deep dive into those 4 skills. So when we paraphrase in a conversation during communicating, we're restating what someone has said using your own words. So an example, as the slide suggests, you felt that your brother wasn't really listening to you, and you're not sure that he understands your concerns. So that would be an example of paraphrasing. You've heard that sentiment, and now you're paraphrasing in your own words what your communicator has just said to you. Summarizing, now we're retelling the major points you've heard, including the needs and the interests of that person. So if I heard you right, you felt you weren't heard or understood, and you're tired, you need a break in the evening, and you're not sure how to get it. So really important that not only are you retelling those points, but you're including the needs and the interests of the person you're communicating with. The next one is about reflecting. So naming or identifying the emotion you hear or observe. An example of this was, your voice sounded angry and your arms were crossed when you told me about the bank statement. So you've reflected, you've named the emotion you've heard or observed. Really important when we look at the active listening piece. The last of the skills we're going to take a look at when we examine active listening is the concept of questioning. So there's an example here of 2 different ways of questioning when we're trying to communicate effectively. The first one is, how did that make you feel? Versus, why did you do that? You'll recognize a big difference in the outcome of the conversation based on what questioning approach you take. And we're going to take a closer look at the difference between open and closed questions. As promised, we're going to take a more in-depth look at open and closed questions. So if in a conversation I choose to use open question, I will probably expect more detailed answers. And the other thing that's important to note is the responder will be given control of the direction the question will take the conversation. Open questions allow for the responder's elaboration on a topic, and it also allows for the responder's assumptions to be explored. On the other hand, if when communicating you use closed questioning, now you're going to elicit some short answers. The asker gets the control of the direction that the question will take the conversation, and those closed questions could be about specific facts, and they could also be based on the asker's assumptions. So important differences to note in the 2 types of questioning. We're going to take a look at open and closed questions and the difference that you might see in how you ask the question about the similar topic. So for example, are you feeling sick? That would be an example of a closed question, but around the same idea, an open question would be, how are you feeling? So you can imagine the difference in the response that you're going to get from the 2 different types of questions. Another example, do you like the new parking rules? Or an open question around the same topic, what impact has the parking rule change had on you? So the lists of these options on the slide give you an opportunity to see how different a response might be with little or a lot of detail provided from both communicators. So it's important to enter the conversation with specific goals of what you would like to learn from your mate, your partner, your colleague, your relationship, and not just entering the conversation with your talking points. So, really important that it's two-way, that you have an idea not only of what you would like to say, but what you would like to learn. This slide just reminds us that perception is everything. So as the slide suggests, count the black dots. You're probably seeing black and white dots jump all over the page. Just another reminder that perception is the eye of the beholder. So it's important to recognize that the perception in a conversation is very different for both parties. So we're going to take a look at 5 components of a healthy relationship. And as a reminder, we're talking about friendship, romance, a business relationship, but these five factors are important to that relationship. So we want to make sure the communication, as discussed, is an important component. The mutual respect piece, the trust piece, the acceptance piece, and the shared values goals. So 5 components of a healthy relationship. And this is a great opportunity to just take inventory on the relationships that you have in your life. Do you have those components in place for the various relationships? So again, communication, mutual respect, trust, acceptance, and the shared value goal. We're going to take it one step further from the 5 components of a healthy relationship, and we're going to take a look at healthy intimate relationship continuum. So on this slide, we're talking about that continuum which we conceptualize green as healthy and over to red abusive or unhealthy. You've probably seen other continuums that conceptualize a similar change or transfer as we get out of green and over to red. You're going to see here the characteristics listed for the relationship and where they fall into that continuum. So under the relationship characteristics for healthy, we're looking at equality, respect, trust, communication, and safety. This is where the relationship supports each partner's balance, well-being, sense of self. There's joy, peace, predictability, and self-esteem, and partners have similar feelings about their relationship. As we move through the continuum, you're going to see the characteristics change. So those words like respect and trust and communication, now when we get into struggling, look like pressure, dishonesty, and lack of communication. So now the relationship changes from a place of stability and predictability to a place of tension and uncertainty. I leave this slide with you and take the opportunity to take inventory or note of the various characteristics and as they change as you move from the healthy, the green, over to the abusive red or unhealthy. So really important to recognize that we are working towards relationships that stay in the green. Intimate relationship continuum, and we're working towards the healthy phase. So really important to note that when we take a look at communication, it does require 2 of the most overlooked qualities in life. It's going to require a lot of patience and a lot of wisdom. And you've often probably seen a lot of the ideas that we talked about around communication today, and you've probably maybe even taken a communication before. But recognizing that you're going to have to be patient with the skills that you've achieved, the application of those skills, and then using them at the right time for the right person in the right situation. So having some patience, but absolutely the wisdom and the skills, the training that you get to apply to maintain a successful either communication piece in this regard, or what we're trying to achieve is a healthy interpersonal relationship. So things don't always go as planned, and or we recognize the importance of resourcing out professionals who might be able to supplement, augment, support, help the relationships you're working through. So some of those resources are listed here. So the MFRC, our Padres, mental health at your health services clinics, PSP for more education and wisdom as listed, CFMAP, so the Member Assistance Program, and then for our civilian counterparts, the Employee Assistance Program. This list could go on and on. The really important message here is that if you do need help, please seek it. The stigma associated with asking for help is something that we've worked very hard on breaking down. We want the asking for help to be a sign of strength, not considered a sign of weakness, that we recognize that the resources available to us will just strengthen the wisdom and the skill set that we have to persevere with a very successful relationship. So as you probably know, every month we do a challenge. This month, we're going to use a healthy relationship activity tracker, which is listed on the next slide, and it'll be made available to you. It's going to be about completing activities within this tracker to help develop and strengthen the relationships you would like to work on. So that could be coworkers, family members, your partner, a neighbor, maybe a teacher. It's an opportunity to reflect, take inventory, but also apply some of the wisdom, some of the skills that you've achieved or that you already had that you would just like to work on in an effort to improve or maintain the relationships that you have. So as the tracker suggests, some of the things that over the next month that you can work towards is having a technology-free date, maybe sharing a physical activity together, going for a walk together, maybe doing a workout together. Maybe you come up with a playlist of music together. Maybe you make a plan to laugh together, share jokes, maybe watch a comedy show. Maybe you find a sunrise or sunset to sit through together. So we've used this before in our Healthy Relationship campaign, and we've had lots of evidence to suggest that this is a great little tool to work through as you're trying to enhance or support the relationships you have in your life. So where you place your focus in a relationship is so important to finding happiness, working on your interpersonal relationships. It can help develop your communication skills. It can help develop trust, and it can absolutely strengthen the mutual respect you have for each other. Just a reminder that this is brought to you by the health promotion team at 8 Wing Trenton. There's 5 of us here, and we look forward to next month's presentation, and we hope you find success in the maintenance, improving, or sustaining those interpersonal relationships you have. Thanks for tuning in.